In America, the content of films, or movies stroke motion pictures as they are known over there, was for many years regulated by what is known as the Hays Code, something that would have prohibited much of today's output from being shown. In 1968, this code was replaced by a rating system that indicated to parents whether a film was suitable for their child or not, or may not be suitable, whatever the case may be. Over here, we've had such a rating system for a lot longer than that, since 1912 to be precise. However, that didn't mean that censorship in the UK was any less stringent than what it was in the States. The BBFC, or British Board of Film Censors as they were then known, issued just two certificates for films U and A. The U certificate, the only rating to be still in use today, although nowadays given to far fewer films than in the past, indicates that a film is universally suitable for all ages. The A certificate, on the other hand, stood for adult, and basically meant that what it said on the tin, as it were, that a film might be more suited to viewing by adults. From 1923 to 1970, children under 16 were required to be accompanied by adults for A films. However, the BBFC did not, and I presume still do not, have any legal powers over what could be shown and with what rating. Local authorities had the ultimate control over this, as they were responsible for vetting films shown in cinemas in their area. As time went on, different certificates were introduced, imposing more restrictions on the ages of children being admitted to films. In 1932, a new one called the H certificate was introduced, alerting parents that a film contained horrific content. But probably all, or more or less all, of your Frankenstein and Dracula films would have got an H certificate in the early days. Although the BBFC intended it to be advisory, many local authorities made the decision to refuse admittance to these films for kids under 16. Finally, in 1951, the H certificate became defunct and was replaced by another one many of the older generation will be familiar with, an all-encompassing certificate covering all films which contain material unfit for viewing by children. This was the X rating, which expressly forbade anyone under 16 from seeing a film to which it was awarded. A Streetcar Named Desire, The Moon is Blue, The Thing from Another World, The Fly, Invasion of the Body Snatchers, the Blob, and God Created Woman, Psycho, The Birds, Saturday Night, Sunday Morning, A Taste of Honey, Repulsion, A Midnight Cowboy, are all examples of films from the 50s and 60s considered just too grown up for kiddies to see, for sexual or violent reasons or otherwise. It's interesting to know that many old X films have a somewhat lower rating today, and I've covered this in a previous discussion. Throughout the 70s, film censorship became even more lenient, resulting in a flood of material being shown on screen, which would previously have resulted in the film being either cut or banned altogether. In 1970, the age limit for seeing X films was raised to 18. The A certificate once again became advisory, meaning that children did not require adults' accompaniment, and a new certificate was introduced to bridge the gap between A and X, called the Double A, which forbade children under 14 from seeing a film. Double A films contain language or scenes that were considered too strong for the A rating, but not strong enough to warrant restricting minors from seeing the film. In the 60s, the BBFC had already read the script for the film Clockwork Orange and deemed it unsuitable for public showing. However, by the time they had seen the finished product in 1971, it was more acceptable to them because they could give it a certificate, identifying it as unsuitable for minors due to its brutal rape scenes and violence. Later on in the decade, a new phenomenon suddenly invaded many people's living rooms, which, unlike the cinema and TV, was very much unregulated. This was a proliferation of home videos, which could be rented from local newsagents without any age restrictions or censorship of content. In the early 80s, the Daily Mail newspaper reported that two films released for the home video market have been seized by police for being in breach of the Obscene Publications Act, which forbids the portrayal of excessive violence in films, etc. These two videos were Driller Killer and Death Trap, a couple of horrors. Death Trap had been passed with cuts for viewing in cinemas by the BBFC with an X rating, but this video included the bits they hadn't permitted to be shown. As time went on, quite a few more of the horror videos were successfully prosecuted under this act, and the Daily Mail, who've never actually been particularly fond of the film industry by any stretch of the imagination, launched a campaign called Ban the Sadist Videos. Obviously, there's been a lowering of standards in recent years, as most of the films banned during the 80s are now legally available to buy or rent, many of them completely uncut, as is the case with Driller Killer. Certificates issued to films by the BBFC for showing in cinemas became compulsory for films released on video, and they were altered so as to make it more clear to parents what they represented. A was replaced by PG, which stands for Parental Guidance. Just like the A certificate which preceded it, this was advisory and did not indicate that a child had to be accompanied by an adult while watching a film in a cinema or renting it from a newsagent. The AA certificate, on the other hand, was restrictive and was replaced by the 15 certificate, which meant that any children under the age of 15 could not watch a certain film in a cinema or be supplied with it on video. The X rating, of course, was replaced by the 18 certificate, which meant that certain films could not be shown in a public cinema or be supplied on video to minors. As time went on, it was felt that some films with a PG rating but were unsuitable for children under a certain age, say high school age, for example, but that a 15 rating would be too harsh for them. It was also felt that quite a few films with a 15 certificate were in fact suitable for younger children, although they couldn't be given a PG rating, as that would possibly mislead parents into thinking they may be suitable for prepubescent children, which they weren't. The general opinion was that just as the AA had been introduced in the 70s to bridge the gap between A and X, something else ought to be introduced to bridge the gap between PG and 15, as quite a lot of films didn't sit easily in either category. The result is what we have today, the 12A rating. Possibly more films are released with this certificate now than any other. It stipulates that a child under the age of 12 must be accompanied by an adult to permit them to watch certain films at a public cinema. There is no 12A rating for films released on DVD or Blu-ray, just a 12 rating, forbidding the film to be supplied to a child under that age. This rating has evolved over time. In the late 80s, there was a 12 rating in the cinema, but none available for films released on video. The guidelines for 12A films in the cinema and 12s on DVD or Blu-ray can be found on the official BBFC website. The first film ever to be shown with a 12 rating in cinemas was Batman in August 1989. At first, the video industry resisted the 12 due to the fact that they were having difficulty distinguishing between 15 and 18-year-olds. Nowadays, this problem has been resolved due to the requirement of providing identification. However, the 12 rating was finally introduced for the video market in July 1994. In 2002, the Cinema 12 rating was modified and renamed 12A. Children under 12 could now, at last, see these films in a public cinema while accompanied by an adult, as they can today. The first film to be rated 12A was The Bourne Identity. Prior to the introduction of a 12A nationwide, the BBFC had instituted a trial period of using it in Norwich, during which time it was known as PG-12.